This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jrnyquist.blog. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. With us this evening, jrnyquist, an expert in geopolitics and the history of communism. He is the author of many books, including his latest, The Fool and His Enemy. Jeff, what an honor to have you back on the Glazov Gang.
It's an honor to be here, Jamie.
Always great to get your wisdom. Lots of things to discuss tonight. Let's just go over some of the current developments, if that's one thing, if that's one way to describe them, because one could also say we're watching a horror movie. Jeff, what's happening on our border? And even more scary on some levels is the Supreme Court openly endorsing the collapse of the border. Amy Barrett, very interesting, the vote that she made. What's going on there exactly in your view?
Well, I don't know the technicalities of the law, but I saw Governor Abbott's response, which was a very carefully worded comment that the federal government, if it abdicates its responsibility to defend the border, and Texas has a border with a foreign country, then it is not fulfilling its contract with the states. And the states have a right to self-defense, to having a border where they have self-defense against incursion from aliens from outside the country. So, and a bunch of other governors signed on. And this is an interesting development because it's going right to the fact that we have ideological leftists in control of the government who believe it's racist for us to have a border because I guess there's many people outside our border who are not white, and the idea that they can't just cross our border at will when they want to is racist. So America's not allowed to have a border. This is kind of the, I guess it's the diversity, equity, inclusion kind of philosophy taken to its extreme to negate our American sovereignty in the border. Every other country in the world has a border. So now you have a kind of crisis between the states and the federal government. And ironically, you have all these Democrat left-wing mayors and even governors saying, oh my gosh, our cities are being overrun by these aliens. We can't, Governor of Florida shipped some illegal aliens into Martha's Vineyard and they got rid of them pretty quick. So it's like, it's a very strange thing. I think, this is my view, that if you go back to this whole thing, the Frankfurt School actually originated from a meeting in the Kremlin, according to Ruth Fischer, former head of the German Communist Party, former founder of the Austrian Party. In 1922, Felix Dzerzhinsky, Karl Radek, Willy Munzenberg, and Lukács, Georgy Lukács, they had this meeting and said, we have to have some kind of way of poisoning the German intelligentsia to make them stink so that we can have a revolution, right? So they allowed the money to go forward. They had some wealthy German that financed this School of Social Research, became the Frankfurt School, got this ideology, Herbert Marcuse, Horkheimer, Erich Fromm. They invented all this thing that has evolved, that is metastasized into this thing that criticizes everything to death. Criticize America, criticize the border, criticize religion, criticize the family, criticize the authoritarian personality. So, and this is what we've got. We've allowed the education system to fall to the cultural Marxists. They've produced this, they've entered the bureaucracies, they've entered politics, and now they're just literally destroying the country from within.
Yeah.
And the open border is the phenomenon, you know.
Well, there's definitely a calculated effort by some globalist entities, the Democrats and the left in the United States obviously allied with them, but by design they need to destroy this country, and they're succeeding in doing it, aren't they?
Yeah, well, it's you could call it socialism, whatever name you give it. It's
Yeah.
the new religion of mankind.
Mm,
It's a religion, and you could say Marxism, Leninism was like a virulent strain, which was highly organized. You have the
mm,
Soviet Union, you have Communist China, and you still have a number of Marxist Leninist states around the globe. And you have these Marxist Leninist parties that, what I heard 40 years ago was a Communist Party USA guy lecturing how we were going to take over the Democratic Party through its left wing and elect stealth
mm,
communist presidents. And I don't know, but that they didn't do that, that it hasn't happened.
mm.
They're not going to walk around with a hammer and sickle tattooed on their forehead,
Yeah.
because Lenin said the party of a new type, you don't necessarily advertise everything. Lenin was
Yeah.
actually a member of the Russian Social Democratic Party, the
Yeah.
Bolshevik wing, right? So
Mm,
so it's like they've got these tactics, these stealth tactics. They've got cultural Marxism. They've got all these poisonous ideas. And I'll point out to you, there's two kinds of communists in the world. There's the ones like the dictator in North Korea and the Chinese communists. They want nuclear weapons, and they don't really want transgendered or multi-sex bathrooms or whatever. They don't want that in their women fighter pilots and all that. But then you have communists in the West and cultural Marxists, but they don't want nuclear weapons, but they want all those other things. So
mm,
I think that the real agenda of this socialist religion is it's to destroy everything that's good, everything that you could envy, everything that's
mm.
successful has to be leveled down. And
Yes.
that's it's like and I think the book Political Ponerology, which was written by a Polish guy under Polish communism. It was a group of Polish psychologists and psychiatrists, and they said, "Look, this regime is full of psychopaths."
Mm,
And when you read Paul Johnson's little mini biography of Marx and some of the other socialists, or you read Robert Paine's biography of Marx, or comments made about Lenin and that Lenin was crazy. Mao was a psychopath. We knew that. I mean, Stalin was a psychopath. Look at how many people he killed. You couldn't be a normal human being and murder that many people. So you have a basically a religion which is led by psychopaths. And there's a lot of, beautiful souls who believe in socialism and they follow it. But I think it has been commented that there's really two types of socialists: the leaders who are sharks and the followers who are just utopians. They just believe in this. This is going to make a better world. And so you have an esoteric Marxism and an exoteric Marxism. That is, you have an outer doctrine which says, "Oh, it's about making a beautiful world," and then the inner doctrine is, "No, it's about power, absolute
mm,
power, and just wiping out anybody that gets in the way and wiping out anybody that maybe is better than us."
mm.
You know, and I think that's very demonic. But I think there is a kind of demonic side to this, and it's spread throughout the world like a cancer. It's an evil that's and people haven't really analyzed it correctly, because you have all these people who think that Marxism or Marxism Leninism is an economic doctrine. But no, it's actually that's just its front. It's really about power, and it's about absolute power, and it's about the ability to gain a exalted sense of self identity, to become a god by killing people or having the power to kill people and take everything they have away from them.
Mm.
And there is a psychology of evil here at work.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. We're definitely on the same page. And so for me, my understanding of it, and in no ways greatly original, just my study throughout my life and how I see that this is, a spiritual battle. And as Christians, we gauge and perceive this, that, communism very much a rebellion against our Creator. And So when we look at Cain's murder of Abel, this is the first communist revolution, the pretension to equality and murder to achieve it. And we go back a little bit in time. I studied psychopaths for a long time, and totalitarians act in that way. But the serpent in the garden, when the psychopaths come to you, they don't come always or often with the horns and telling you exactly what's going to happen to you. They come with smiles. They come with promises. And the serpent wasn't telling Eve what was going to happen when she ate the apple and gave it to Adam. He postured as if he was operating in her interest. And when we think of Lucifer's fall, when we think of Satan's fall, it was a rebellion against the Creator. But it wasn't just a rebellion. He wanted the worship. He wanted the adoration. He wanted to be God. And I think it would be fair to say that this disposition trickles down into the socialist impulse.
Yeah. Yeah, Whittaker Chambers made that comment that communism was mankind's second oldest religion, which was what the serpent said to Eve in the garden. You shall be as gods. You're not going to die. But of course, proves to be very deadly. It's brought death to the world. And of course, right now we've got the kind of liberation theology Islam in Iran that's pushing this demonic attacks on Israel and the Houthi rebels that are directing the missiles to attack ships in the Red Sea, and you've got the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and you've got the Chinese threatening Taiwan, and you've got the rumor that Kim Jong-un wants to invade South Korea, restart the Korean War. So you've got all these places where things can suddenly blow up, these fronts can open up. And I'm very concerned because we've got people in Washington, Berlin, Paris. What are the leaders? What is the real allegiance of Macron and Scholz and Biden? Are they really? Is President Biden really pro-American? Well, why has he been against us developing new nuclear weapons when North Korea has newer and more modern nuclear weapons than we do? China does, Russia does. Why haven't we tested a nuclear weapon in now it's almost 34 years, 33 years since we've tested a nuclear weapon. Our nuclear arsenal, our Minutemen of our last 5 Minuteman 3 tests, half of the missiles failed. So that would suggest that half of our 400 and odd Minuteman strategic rockets don't work. And we only have one warhead on each one of those. That means we only have 200 nukes, maybe, to throw. And then do those nukes actually detonate? What would the detonation rate if you combine the failure rate of the rocket with the potential failure rate of the warheads? Nobody knows. But this is a problem. And I think the Russians and Chinese, I think they know that we're on the edge of not being a nuclear power anymore. And I think that's why they're pushing.
Very scary. Jeff, we're putting this whole puzzle together here, just in our discussion of socialism, the Marxism, the impulse to become gods, because everything that Biden is doing and what you're discussing here and who Putin is and who Xi is, and this is all interconnected because it's the striving for this quote-unquote utopia, but the things they have to do to get there entail terror, and then when they get there, it's terror. So we're discussing this. So let me just put a couple pieces into this puzzle here. So let me just go back a little bit here philosophically, because I've pondered this my whole life and continue to. There's something about the fear of death and the belief that somewhere within this communist revolution or whatever it is that they're pursuing, there's some kind of striving towards immortality, isn't there? Ultimately, the socialist longing and impulse It's to get back to Eden, but without God, and somewhere to overcome death, right?
Yeah, it's funny. When I was in graduate school, I was a teaching assistant, and a group of us. There were three other graduate students. There were four of us. It was Introduction to Political Analysis, and the three of them, they were all Marxists. I was not. We had our system, and we graded these. We were really overwhelmed with work. We graded these things, and then we went out for pizza and a beer, and they wanted to take the party to this lady's house, and I was the designated driver, so I was the sober one, and I got to hear them as they were drinking, and I heard the most extraordinary things. This one Marxist, he was very angry, and he was talking about, walking on the boardwalk by the beach, seeing the beautiful moon getting ready to set down on the Pacific Ocean. And he said, then he thought of all the starving and poor and suffering people of the earth. And it just went black. And then he thought, his next thought was, nobody's going to remember me in 100 years, which goes directly to your point. He thought of his own death. He didn't believe in God. He thought it was all for nothing if nobody's going to remember him in 100 years, right? Because he thinks of his own mortality, and he is just desperate to become God through this belief of his and to achieve some kind of immortality. And it was very clear to me. I mean, not immediately. I had to think about it for a while, and what I'd heard from the other ones, I heard similar things from all of them. There is a kind of, when you have this nihilist point of view, you can't find any meaning in anything. You don't have any spiritual reference point. So that makes you, it puts too much weight on your life here, your physical life. Everything, just think of, if this existence that you have here is all you have, that all you'll ever have, that when you die, that's the end. Think about how much weight you're placing on that. That for you is the all-important only thing. And so how do you compensate for that feeling of insignificance and that feeling of meaninglessness? You have to try to be that much more grandiose. You have to try to become God. You have to become your own savior, in essence, right? And it almost seemed like that was what he was reaching for, because he's worried about all the poor people in the world, and it's spoiling this beautiful evening.
And Jeff, you become your own savior, but you also become the self-appointed redeemer of others, and you get to decide who is saved and who is damned.
Yeah, that's right. You become a kind of, since there is no God, well, you better fill God's shoes then. And I had to reason backwards from what he was telling me, but it was rather clear that this is what it meant. And then, of course, to find the statements like people like Whittaker Chambers, Eric Voegelin made the statement that people who become communists or Nazis are alienated. They're broken and alienated inwardly. And this is what makes them susceptible. And Voegelin said their murderous rage comes from the idea to get a false sense of identity from having this power of life and death. They're going to get a fake kind of identity, a false identity, that's given to them. It's like a psychopath. Why do these serial murderers, what are they getting from killing people in such a bizarre way? What is it? It's like they're feeding on the people they're killing. And it's sort of, there's some kind of link there psychologically.
And there's a mutated carbon copy of Jesus's blood redeeming us, but in their formula, because Mao always wrote about how important it is to kill millions of Chinese people, it's the blood of humans that redeems the earth for them. There has to be blood.
Yes, there does. And of course, this is an interesting inversion, because you have Carl Jung, who had these horrible apocalyptic visions towards the end of his life. that I think when his next set of posthumous books are released, we'll see some of that. He wrote a book called Aeon, in which he was struggling with this, these dreams, and he looks at the apocalypse. He looks at the book of he talks about Jonah and Leviathan and Behemoth, and he said something. He said Antichrist is real. And he said it's a mistake to think that Antichrist is not real. And he defined Antichrist in the text of the book. He said, Antichrist is a thing that is a group, or it's a person, it's a movement that promises the same thing that Christ promises. You know, the millennial reign, the lion will lie down with the lamb, there'll be peace on earth, there'll be plenty, you know, except that he delivers the exact opposite.
Right.
And of course, what you just described was Christ redeems the world, but they really damn the world to communists. And the blood is not the blood of the Savior, but the blood of the person who's trying to destroy the world.
Yeah, they're disinfecting the world with human blood to build their paradise, which of course, as we know, becomes hell. Jeff, I want to throw another thing out. I used to run things by my parents all the time, and just what I was writing and stuff. And my dad and mom always had so much to tell me. But there was one time, something that I wrote about the leftist mindset, I didn't run it by my dad. And my dad afterwards said, "You forgot to mention how much they hate the concept and notion of shame and guilt. Because the leftist cannot say mea culpa. I apologize, I'm sorry." And there's some kind of, and just when you think about people that may not live according to the Ten Commandments in the Bible, it's a little bit nicer for them to have Hillary in charge, to have a Biden in charge, because when they engage in what they engage in, they kind of get a pat on the back. If somebody like Trump is in office, he might be surrounded by some evangelical Christians, by some Orthodox Jewish people, and there's a little bit more concern with ethics. And people who don't want rules don't like that. So I'm just putting that on the table. But something I've given a lot of thought to is, and tried to understand, is what I just said, this hatred of the concept of shame and guilt, of sin, that we need to apologize. And also in this hatred of inequality on earth. But I think in some way for the socialist and the Marxist, it's actually the preparation to abolish the final judgment after death. They hate the concept that there will be a judgment and that not everybody is equal. So if they're trying to abolish inequality on some levels, because then there can't be a final judgment where in the end some people go to heaven, but some people might not get there, which might be them. So ahead of time, they want to destroy that, because in the end, it's a fear of an attempt to eliminate the Creator's final judgment of humans. What do you think?
Well, if you say that all people are equal, then what you're really saying is that all deeds are equal. Because all people don't live the deeds they should. And how do we really judge a person? The person is the sum of the deeds that they do, both good and ill. So when you go to this equality thing, it's like an attempt to wipe away the idea of judgment by saying that all deeds, if all men are equal, then all deeds are equal, because the deeds of all men are not equal.
And if all deeds are equal, then the Ten Commandments don't matter.
That's right. And it doesn't matter whether if you murder someone or you kiss them, right? Or you bless them. It's all the same, it's extremely bleak, but at least then they can be relieved of that feeling, because what they're goes to narcissism, which is related to evil and to psychopathy. The narcissist is a person who feels deep inside this big, but they don't accept who they are. They don't because we are little, there is a sense in which we need to be humble, and we are weak, and we are human, and we have to accept the fact that we're not gods. We're not, super brilliant, and we're not supermen or anything. But this really is difficult for the narcissist to humble himself. He feels so bad about that he's so small, so he has to project this false personality, this image of being great and wonderful, and to be exciting all the time. And of course, this is a fake self. And what it is they call it the denial of the true self. That is, they lose their actual soul in the attempt to puff themselves out and to deny their own humanity.
Well, Jeff, and so they did it in the Soviet Union and in China and in North Korea and in Nicaragua and in Cuba and Eastern Europe, and now they're trying to take this worldwide. And I want to talk some more with you about that right after the break with our sponsors.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. My Pillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new My Pillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit MyPillow.com.
And that's right. Make sure to go to mypillow.com or mystore.com and use promo code GG21. You can get a discount of up to 60% off on all the amazing products, and the Glazov Gang gets a credit. That's right. When you support the great Mike Lindell, you are also supporting the Glazov Gang. And if you like one-of-a-kind handmade art, make sure to go to lutfstudio.com and purchase resin art pieces made by our producer, the one and only Annie Cyrus. Use promo code GLAZOV to get special discounts, and you'll be empowering Annie in her fight for freedom and for America, and you'll also be empowering the Glazov Gang. Thank you so very much. And we are back with the great Jeff Nyquist. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thanks for having me back.
What do you think about my promotional talents?
Well, you do good. You have a good voice. You're well practiced. It's great. I'll buy a towel.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Well, it's getting tougher and tougher for us, so we got to keep plugging along. As you know, we're being heavily censored and demonetized everywhere and shadow banned, and we're very grateful to our sponsors that allow discussions like this. So let's get back to the serious issues of our time and to these serious questions. And I very much value this conversation, Jeff, because I've been dedicated to this my whole life. I come from a country where my parents put their lives on the line for freedom. And I was always trying to figure out where we came from, why my family suffered so much, our family members so much, why millions of my people had to die for this idea. And you've mentioned a little earlier in our discussions, and in preparation for this show, we discussed and you shared with me this double-edged sword of socialism, the Marxist idea, that is, we discussed how psychopaths present themselves, but then what it actually is. So in the Marxist notion, in the socialist idea, there's this utopia, but yet the road there is filled with violence and blood. And then even when it's achieved, there's violence and blood. Talk to us a little bit more about this, that there's this dream of paradise, and yet it's hell on earth every time they achieve it.
Well, it's interesting. Nietzsche wrote about this. He called it the transvaluation of values, where you have a regime that turns everything inside out and upside down, and you basically you make an inverted reality. And of course, inversion is a satanic formula, if you think about it. Inversion. So, for example, saying men are women, or they ought to be. Saying black is white. Doing everything in a backwards way. If you look at a lot of the values that are being put forward by the new socialist ideas or cultural Marxism, you'll find that they're an inversion. Women need to be men. They need to go into the workplace. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. It's all about career. Oh, you don't want to have babies, right? And then men need to be softer, and they need to find their feminine side, and so on and so forth. And that's just with gender confusion. And so they want to give beta blockers to children so that they can reach the age where they get to decide what sex they're going to be. As if this was ever, in terms of how the universe works, the world works, that we have this kind of conscious, oh, you're 13 now, you get to decide, are you going to be a boy or a girl? That's madness. And that's only one area of madness. It is like the lower high and the higher low. So for example, the proletariat should be in charge, okay? So you used to have the priest class, the warriors, you go to Plato's Republic, you've got the merchants, the people in the middle class, and then you've got the urban workers and the peasants down below, the proletariat. And they've inverted it so the people at the bottom should be at the top, and the people at the top should be looted, destroyed, and in the concentration camp, in the gulag. And it's kind of interesting. And the same thing when it comes to ideas. Truth, there's no such thing as truth, Truth is just a trick used to oppress you. So then what do you have in place of truth? A very special kind of lie that, so all our values are turned upside down. It's the transvaluation of values. And I think Nietzsche once made the comment, and he's the one that had the parable of the madman about God being dead. And the parable of the madman in Nietzsche is a figure taken from Diogenes the Cynic. Diogenes was the dog philosopher, right? He was a homeless guy. He believed having a job would compromise him. So he was very determined to be right on about the truth. And very famously, he would walk around Athens during the day with a lantern looking for a man. And he would say, in broad daylight, and they'd say, why are you walking around with a lantern in broad daylight? And he said, I'm looking for a man, but I only find rascals and scoundrels, right? And the thing is that what has happened here is that Nietzsche's Diogenes figure is looking for God, and he throws his lantern down and he looks at everybody, and he's in the modern 19th century, the 1880s, and he says, I know where God is. You've killed him. You are the murderers of God. And he's pointing at them. And then they're all looking at him like, we didn't do that. What are you talking about? He goes, oh, you don't know what you've done. And so Nietzsche was making a comment on what modernity is about, what he saw they were doing. in the 19th century. And of course, this is what the socialist and the communist project really is about, because they want to be that thing. And like you say, they don't want to have guilt. They don't want to be responsible for being better, being noble, fighting the dark side, because evil is across every human heart. It's the battle is in all of us.
This is Solzhenitsyn's very profound statement that good and evil crosses over into the heart of every human being. And but Jeff, absolutely this inversion, because our Lord is the creator, God is the creator. Satan can't create anything, so he just constantly tries to mutate everything and blur everything. He's always copying what the Lord has done, but then blurring it and putting it on its head. But he can't create. But I think about the rainbow in the Bible, and after the flood, why there was a rainbow, and what God's message was about the rainbow, such a beautiful thing. And all of a sudden, what a certain movement has taken the rainbow and made it mean in the socialist enterprise today. That's very interesting. And there's a lot that we could talk even about the period that we just went through and the things that humans were worshiping during the tyranny that we just went through. In many respects, a replacement, in my view, of Jesus Christ, of communion, of our sacraments. The socialist enterprise, it replaces this stuff with its own things. And I was thinking just about this inversion as you're discussing. Satan, he's always blurring the truth, because he doesn't come again in horns. He just blurs it, doesn't he, and twists it.
There's Christians have practice. They have prayer. They have communion. They have things they do that are practice, that they practice their religion. The communists also have a practice. So the communists, they're required to pay their dues and to go to their meetings, and they're required to join groups and to get these groups to follow these certain lines. They set up various fronts and let's ban the bomb, let's believe in climate change, let's shut down these evil capitalists, and of course, so they are practicing too. And in that inversion that you talk about, what their practice tends towards is the destruction of order. So like if you look at cultural Marxism, the early Marx is talking about how he wants to tear down the family, he wants to tear down all the structures of society. And you can see that the classic conception of politics, going back to the ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians, is as above, so below. Was the ancient Egyptians, they saw in the Milky Way the mirror of the Nile, right? So the heavens were a reflection of what was on earth, and the creator had this design, and that you had to follow the design, that the ways of man had to follow the design of God. Well, this idea of the Marxist is the opposite. It's a rejection of the design of God, of the creation. And creation is an incredibly ordered thing. There's hierarchy in creation. And there's meaning and there's beauty. You look at symmetry, you look at the beauty of a tree or an animal or a sunset, you look at the universe, you look at the rings of Saturn. All of these things have tremendous beauty, made to be amazingly beautiful to behold. And yet the Marxist, he doesn't want any of it. He wants to tear that down. It hurts him to see it. So he wants to bring a kind of disorder. And so that's why perverting the existing order, male and female hierarchy, perverting that is so essential to that mission of destruction.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's, in many of them, it's unconscious. So you ask yourself, why does Mao, Mao's a great example, because why does he kill so much? It's so much of it is so unnecessary.
Yeah.
It's so exaggerated. Same thing with Stalin and Lenin.
Yeah.
It's almost done for its own sake.
Yes. Yes. It takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
it is. And this is what's so disturbing in my sociology of mass destruction weapons, is that the appearance of this sect, this new religion of destruction, coincides with the advent of the technology to make weapons that can destroy cities, diseases that can wipe out large populations of people. So that and what do? They're just crazy to have more bombs. The Chinese are crazy to develop viruses and other biological organisms that can just wipe out lots of people. It's like, why are you even playing with that? Why are you
Yeah.
trying to do this genetic engineering to microorganisms that could wipe out the human race?
Jeff, just one more thing on socialism and Marxism with all your profound ideas and input. Then I just want to quickly touch on some of the world events that are interconnected with this. But I remember I was a waiter at in a certain restaurant in my younger years, which I guess is a long time ago now. But I talked about my views, and I was very much against the left. And that particular, it's very interesting that it's the wait staff in general, filled with artists or actors or whatever it was. They're very lefty, and quite a few of them really, really hated me. And I remember there was one time this one particular waiter came up to me and he goes, "It's because of people like you that communism doesn't work." And I remember I went home, and like you said, I started thinking back to, I was thinking the logic there. So Jamie Glazov equals communism doesn't work. So if communism works, what if we just get rid of Jamie Glazov, right? Oh, yeah. So we're just going to create collective farms. Oh, but what if some kulaks want to hold on to a cow? Guess the kulaks got to go, right? So the very notion, Jeff, of a classless society, because some people think, they say, no, socialism, Marxism, great ideas. It's just the people ruined it. And I remember one of my very intelligent friends once told me, because there were some people that always said, Stalinism is dead, but Trotskyism lives. We had these Trotskyists on our campus, and they just thought, and I remember my buddy said to them, Trotsky would have killed even more people. And I remember these Trotskyists were just so traumatized by what he said. But the very notion of a classless society necessitates terrorism.
Yes, it does. And in fact, all these unnatural, God made the world with hierarchy in it. So if all men aren't created equal, because they're not created equal, I'm not equal to somebody who is stronger than me or smarter than I am. And everybody has different abilities. Everybody's different. So they're not equal, they're different. And there is a hierarchy. It doesn't mean that you have less human dignity because you're a farmer, you're a peasant versus an artisan versus an aristocrat versus a priest. It's you have a different role. And there is a hierarchical order. And there's a hierarchy of not just values, but of deeds. And to deny that the world is made that way, that God made the world that way, is and to say, oh no, God made the world wrong. I mean, that was what Eric Voegelin called Narcissism, right? Because God is like this evil demon who made this awful world that we're trapped in. That's really what Narcissism teaches. And it was Eric Voegelin that made the point is, wait a minute, Marxism is just a modern form of Gnosticism. Where the creator becomes the bad guy and you've got to bump him off and you've got to then become your own creator.
Yeah.
And that is really, in essence, that's the whole game.
Yeah.
And it's people think about it like, Carl Jung made this point. He said, all these political religions, they're trying to get salvation through politics rather than from being spiritual. And he said, all they do is project their shadow, which in Jungian terms means, like this guy was blaming you. Jamie, you're the one that, You can't have socialism because it's you. He's putting all the evil on the world on you. You're the evil one. See, there's nothing wrong with him. It's all wrong with you. And if you just didn't exist, right? So he said, you got all these.
Imagine if he took power. Imagine if he took power.
Monstrous. And of course, what in his last book, The Undiscovered Self, Jung went through this, and Jung was saying that everybody turning away from religion and going to politics as their salvation was a madhouse, and the human race was going insane, and all they were going to do is all project their evil onto each other and just murder each other.
Jeff, before we go, thank you so much. I just really want to touch on what's happening with Hamas and in Gaza with Israel. I just want to say, just sometimes on a personal note, I just want to connect this, that my dad worried very much that he had introduced me to certain works maybe too early. And I always told him, Dad, don't worry. But we're from the Soviet Union, and my dad wanted me, to read Gulag Archipelago and Robert Conquest, and just so I would know what communism was, where, etc. And he worried that maybe it was too early in my years, but yeah, maybe, but I was very grateful to him, and I said, please, I already, the family that we're from, what we knew that happened. But I will say that it's dark stuff, and Jeff, in my life, sometimes I have to take some breaks, because what we know about what the Khmer Rouge did, what Stalin did to get confessions, what happened in the Cultural Revolution, It can lead to some difficulty sleeping sometimes, and when our hearts are with the victims. And right now, the hostages that are in those Gaza tunnels, they're in my heart. And as I'm studying, I mean, because I've studied Islamic Jihad and what they like to partake in with their victims, which includes a lot of sexual humiliation and decapitating and beheadings and rape and all these foul ways that they want to grotesquely humiliate their victims sexually. It's a very dark chapter in Islamic Jihad, a dark realm. But the latest reports, what is happening to those women hostages, and it's not just the women. They are raping and sexually violating the men. And where am I going with this? I just want to say that this very much troubles my soul, and they're with me in my heart. And something that the reality in front of us is that a large portion of the world is cheering this on. And Israel is the bad guy. And all of a sudden, women are to be believed, but not Israeli women being raped in the tunnels of Gaza by Hamas. That's not Joy Behar's concern. That's not Whoopi Goldberg's concern. That's not Rachel Maddow's concern. The left, what a disgusting entity it is. And the fact that Israel is made out to be the bad guy, while I just talked about what Hamas is engaged in, that's the world that we live in, isn't it?
It is. Well, Stalin is the one that taught the communists, never accept moral condemnation, immediately turn it around on the people that are condemning you.
Wow.
And he said that I knew she's very elderly. She's still alive. She was a lawyer. She met Stalin in the late 40s when she was in law school. And Stalin spoke to these law students about legality, about accusation. And, if anybody accuses us, the communists, of doing something, we immediately indict them for exactly that thing. And it's remarkable because that is exactly what you see again and again. They will turn around and do, you look at Hamas, when they did that savage attack on Putin's birthday, by the way, on October 7th, was like a birthday gift for Putin. They actually had their phones out and they were filming or video recording their atrocities to strike fear.
Jeff, they're not hiding it anymore.
No. the most horrific treatment of children and women and elderly people, victims, innocent, unarmed people being murdered, being struck down in the middle of the day, and in this sudden, shocking way. And they want this to be celebrated. And so what do you do when you're attacked in this way? How do you deal with these beasts? This is the big dilemma that we have. It's like Iran is about to get the bomb. We know they've got the weapons grade uranium. The world to let that happen. Thank you, Barack Obama. Thank you, Mr. Biden, for allowing billions to flow to Iran to do this. These facilitators of this evil, it's like they're monsters too, the people that facilitated this, because a leader is someone who has the prudence and is caring for his people and is looking out for the danger and stops the evil enemy before that enemy can do these wicked deeds. And no, they're not doing it, that is blood on their hands.
And Jeff, you would just, I think almost any other power in the world would just start dropping bombs. The Israelis, the most moral army in the world in terms of how it deals with the terrorism it has to defend itself from. They don't want to bomb because they want to save not just their own lives, but the lives of Palestinians. They're going door to door trying to do it more humanely and sacrificing Israeli boys and girls at a very large number because there's booby traps and bombs, sacrificing their own boys and girls to wage a humane battle, and the world still condemns Israel.
Yeah. And you look at they gave this gift to Putin because they knew that it was going to hurt Ukraine, and because the artillery that now must be reserved for Israel, the artillery stockpile, is not able to be sent to Ukraine. So you have this cooperation, this diabolical cooperation between Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis. And they're really helping each other out because they're two different fronts in the same war, is what they really are. And so you see Putin, you watch the news in Ukraine, and he does missile strikes, and they blow up a gas station and a supermarket, and they hit an apartment complex. And the Ukrainians, of course, fire back and destroy an ammunition depot or destroy a helicopter gunship base. So look at this. The Ukrainians are firing back at military targets, and the Russians are firing and killing civilians, trying to maim civilians.
Right. Jeff, go ahead. We got to go, but just briefly wrap up. Go ahead.
So there's not the attempt to make a moral equivalence between the two. Yes, there's killing on both sides, just like we bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but it isn't morally the same. Not exactly, because we didn't want the war. We didn't start the war. And the truth of the matter is that how do we get the war to end?
Yeah. And we don't want, and the deaths that the good side causes is are inadvertent. With the enemy, it's deliberate.
Ideally, yes, and I'm very much for this policy of inadvertent, but I would have been tempted as Israel to say, all right, this is too much for us. You are going to leave Gaza and tell the Egyptians, leave it. We're going to drop a nuclear weapon on it. Wow. We're going to just make a smoking hole in the ground. It's not going to exist. So we're going to give so many days for everyone to leave. Yeah. And that's going to be it. We're going to seal it up. And, if they want to give up the hostages and go, we can trade the hostages for them getting out. And in fact, if people actually react on that, you may not have to drop the bomb. You may just have a solution. But if they don't, so is anybody going to do that to you again? If people just, take these refugees, if the world wants to save them, but that might not work. But whatever solution that you have, you're going to have to use violence to defend yourself, because weapons can only be opposed by weapons.
Very profound, Jeff. Definitely got to have a round 2 with you. Even an hour is not enough. With you, a lot of wisdom and brilliant, fascinating commentary. Thank you, Jeff, for having such a beautiful mind and soul and heart, and for standing for freedom and for truth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie.
And Jeff, where should our audience members go that really want to check you out and read all your stuff?
They can go to jrnyquist.blog, jrnyquist.blog, and
Okay.
my books are available on Amazon.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff. Keep up the good fight.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Glazov Gang this evening. Make sure to subscribe to our Rumble channel and click instant notifications. We'll see you soon. Good night.